Hello, everyone. I'm excited to talk to Aaron Marshall. He's the Chief Operating Officer of Santa Barbara Zoo, also a corporate culture or culture thought leader. Aaron, nice talking to you today.
Hey, nice being here. Thanks for having me.
Great. Can you share a little bit about yourself and your role with Santa Barbara Zoo first?
Yeah, totally. So I'm in my 10th year at the Santa Barbara Zoo, and I serve as the Chief Operating Officer. We're kind of a medium-sized boutique zoo with beautiful gardens. We're on like 27 acres. We serve about 450,000 guests each year, and our operating budget's right around 16 million. And zoos are super interesting work because we have so many businesses that operate under the same umbrella. So for what that means for me is that I get to oversee our animal care and vet divisions, our facilities and maintenance, security and safety, attractions, admissions, parking, private and public events. We've got 3 retail outfits, 3 food and beverage outlets that I oversee, our membership, our volunteers, our education programs, including our recently first licensed outdoor preschool in the state of California. So that's kind of exciting. And then I also oversee the personnel side of HR. And then, that's kind of the operational side. And then I'm in charge of our capital projects. So I do a lot of interaction with our board through governance committee, finance committee, animal welfare committee, executive committee, and buildings and grounds. But all of that just means that there are a bunch of really smart people that I get to work with and resource, and they do really good jobs.
Wow. Well, it sounds like you're overseeing a lot, working with a great group of people there. I actually first heard you on a LinkedIn learning course, creating a culture that inspires employees. And I was curious, what's your definition of culture or corporate culture, and what do you think good culture looks like?
Yeah, that's it's fun seeing that question pop up when you sent it to me ahead of time because I had to think about it. Where did I get my culture notion?
Yeah.
And I think I picked it up like 24 years ago teaching 6th grade social science. So in a really basic sense, what is culture? Culture is how we do life together. And in my experience, as a team member, as a leader, and as a coach, healthy cultures are those that are explicit about how they do life together. And then they also prioritize what I think are kind of the 3 most important pieces, which are care, clarity, and mission alignment.
All right, nice. How do we do life together? I like that. And then again, when you did the course on creating a culture that inspires employees, first of all, any takeaways that you think people should get from that course?
Yeah, so I went to the folks that actually took the course to think about this one because it's so fun to have people take that course and then they post it, and then I like to pop back in and say, hey, what takeaways do you have? What are you going to try out with your team?
Yeah.
And it's really fun to see what pops. And I think kind of the things that are popping are folks trying to figure out how to get their people on mission together and how to build trust. And so, like, the biggest thing for building trust is probably learning how to assume positive intent. Like kind of a section in the course on that. And that's been a surprise for some people. But I think really powerful, right? When we are so good at telling ourselves stories, and when there's a lack of information, we fill gaps, and we usually fill them in ways that sort of justify us and assume the worst about other people because we want to be defensive and protect ourselves against what might happen. And when we make that simple mind shift where we assume that other people are working hard, doing their best, and that they have positive intent, it's a lot easier to build relationships. And people can see that when you come at them, right? If you're not coming in defensive or aggressive. And so it just creates space to have safer conversations.
I couldn't agree more. Empowering people, building trust. I was also curious, after doing the course, what was your experience? Was there any surprises? Did other people connect? I was just kind of curious kind of what your feedback was and what you felt afterwards.
Yeah, well, huge props to the firm that I got to work with. So it's a little firm in Santa Barbara. They're not that little anymore. They're growing pretty rapidly, but it's called Madecraft. And so, for anybody interested in doing a course, I think they're phenomenal. Their author experience is really stand up, start to finish. And so having them kind of coach through, I did a lot of teaching in my career, high school and college now. And so, I felt good about putting together a scope and sequence, but they do a great job of getting you to tighten everything up and kind of give it in snippets, and their production quality is amazing. And probably the biggest surprise was coming home with makeup on my face and having my kids laugh at me. That was pretty fun.
Nice. Well, if anyone who's watching this, I recommend checking out Aaron Marshall on LinkedIn and checking out the course. I mean, I thought it was excellent. I've done several LinkedIn courses.
Thanks, man.
I definitely got some good insights from that. I wanted to ask you, when it comes to leaders and companies, do you think there's a couple common mistakes that they make when they're not, landing well when it comes to corporate culture?
Mm. Yeah, that's a good question. I think, doing coaching and running retreats for firms, one of the things that comes up a lot is that leaders tend to have a very clear vision and set of values
Okay.
that they perceive, but often they assume that those are shared values and a shared vision among their team or their organization. And so I like to talk about Wittgenstein's beetle in the box thought experiment. Are you familiar with that?
No.
Okay, so Wittgenstein was a philosopher of language, and he does this thought experiment when he says, hey, imagine that you've got a box in front of you and it's got a beetle in it. Now get a really clear picture in your head of what that beetle looks like. And so I'll do this at a retreat, have everybody kind of picture their beetle. And then you start asking people, describe your beetle. And this one's black, and this one's iridescent, and this one has spots, and this one has wings, but only a few others have wings. And this one has a horn, and a few people have horn, but somebody has two horns. And really quickly, you realize that we all know what a beetle is. But the way that we think about a beetle, the way we get detailed about a beetle, it looks really different. And it turns out the same thing's true about values. What does respect mean? Well, it looks really different inside everybody's box. And so if we're not articulating that, we're not over communicating as leaders what our vision is and what our values are, and getting buy-in so it becomes these shared concepts, then we're not really building a culture that owns those things. This is why it drives me nuts when you walk into a firm and they've got 6 words up. And you're like, well, what does that mean? Like, rip it down. What are you living? Right? What are the things that define you uniquely in the market, or define your culture uniquely here, that people really want to show up and be themselves? So I think that's probably the biggest thing. Leaders having clarity, but not communicating and building buy-in to have shared clarity.
All right. Well, I appreciate you saying most of the questions I sent were good questions, but let me have a follow, because this I didn't share. But when you're talking beetle example, any advice when people are communicating, leaders communicating employees, but the values seem slightly not aligned? Like, how do you talk through if somebody sees their beetle is purple and the other is blue? I mean,
I think you move to behaviors.
Okay.
Right? So values are these big, airy things up here. How do we live them out? What are the behaviors that live that value out? So, hey, for us, respect looks like X, Y, and Z. And when I watched you do this behavior, it had this impact on the team. And that impact is contrary to what we're hoping for with this value. That's why we have this value. So we need to talk about this behavior and how we can shift it so it aligns with what we're trying to do in terms of respecting one another, or having integrity, or whatever the value is.
Nice. Another thing too, I'm noticing, I'm a Gen Xer. There's baby boomers. There's millennials. There's Gen Zers, and all kind of slightly different perspectives on approaching and things. But any advice on different generations kind of communicating, building culture together?
Yeah, it's tough, right? You're always going to have, it's just like cultural barriers or language barriers. The goal in my mind is always to create a shared understanding.
Yeah.
And that takes talking
and
thinking through stuff. And so, as a leader, a lot of that looks like staying curious. And this is, borrowing this from Brene Brown, integrated that into some of the course, and also the habits course. It's just like being a curious person, being a lifelong learner means that when you approach that challenge, you don't come in and go, hey, you're doing this wrong.
Yeah.
You go, hey, I saw you do this. Like, help me understand that.
Yeah.
What were you aiming at there? How do you think it landed? Did that work for you? Like, was that bearing fruit in the workplace? Is that what you want to see happen? And sort of like coaching through a situation can be really helpful. One of the challenges with cross-generational stuff, I think, we make a lot of that, right? We have, like, we box people, and people fight against their boxes. I'm a Gen Xer too, and nobody puts us in a box, right? We're our own people, and we're going to fight and rebel and overthrow and all that. But we're not really all like that. We just have these tendencies, and it turns out the next generation had that tendencies certain years, and I think in the end we're all people, and the more grace that we can sort of give each other as we're having conversations and remaining curious to really understand. Like, zooming out, I think the two things people want more than anything else: to be known and to be loved. And it doesn't really matter what generation you are, right? And so if I can show somebody that, hey, yeah, we have this conflict, but I respect you as a person. I care about you as a person. I know you. I'm going to pay attention and learn about you so that I can know you.
Yeah.
Then you create space to have shared understanding.
I like that a lot. I feel like I've been learning a lot working with my Gen Z and millennial colleagues as well. So, all right. Well, last question, I guess, for you is, do you have like one or two tips just for businesses or leaders that are just trying to build a better culture?
Sure. I think when culture is off, the power dynamic is usually strong. And it can lead to a lot of us them stuff when culture feels unhealthy. And so one of the things to work toward as a leader is figuring out ways to shift down the power dynamic. And you do that by being vulnerable. So great example, most leaders are pretty excited to give help, to offer help. Hey, how can I help you? How can I take this from you? How can I, right? And that's great. Like, we should be helpful people. That's a good thing. But it's actually way more vulnerable to ask for help, to say, hey, I can't actually accomplish this thing without you. I need your help. Are you willing to help me? Can you help me with this piece? And and it has to be authentic, and it has to be meaningful work, right? You can't make stuff up and go, oh, just help me with this nothing. And then I did my vulnerability thing. Like, it has to be real. But there is a vulnerability in asking for help, because you're saying, I can't do this on my own. I don't control the end by myself. That's a big deal. So I would say that. And then the other thing that you really want to do, especially if you're growing, I've worked with a number of companies that are scaling rapidly. And when you're turning folks over or growing quickly, you go from 15 to 30 to 60, over a couple of years or even a year. It's really hard to keep your culture contained, and onboarding becomes problematic. So if you've got unhealthy stuff happening, everybody you onboard is onboarding into that potential toxicity. So what do? Well, you got to create really reliable feedback loops. And you need them with your direct reports, you need them with your skip level folks, you need them with frontline staff. And that looks different in how you do it. But I'll say kind of a quick tip for creating feedback loops with your direct reports. And I'm stealing this from Kim Scott, who stole it from Fred Kaufman, but end your one-on-ones with this question. Say, is there anything I could do or stop doing that would make it easier for you to work with me? And I mean, I love it. I think I used it. I stole it from, Radical Candor, and used it, and I didn't get anything for the first couple of weeks. And she sort of says in the book, you're not going to hear anything for the first couple of weeks. And then she says, turn it into a homework assignment. Hey, next time I see you, I'd like you to tell me one thing that I could do or stop doing that would make it easier for you to work with me.
Yeah.
And then you'll get a response, and then you have to do the hard work of listening and receiving it and responding appropriately.
Yeah. I don't remember anything about a beetle analogy in the course, but I do remember that exact quote. I'm writing it down, and I think I stole it from you. I may have stole it and gave you credit, but I think I posted about that on LinkedIn because I found that powerful. So
yeah.
Well, listen, I appreciate it. I loved your course. It's been great getting to know you. I appreciate you taking the time. So I look forward to further communications and just wishing you the best.
Yeah. Hey, I really appreciate the time. Thanks so much for reminding me, Matt.
Thanks.